The unusual story begins when a British merchant ship was sailing through the desolate Atlantic Ocean. The captain noticed another ship in the distance that wasn't moving and wasn't responding to their signals. As they got closer, they discovered that this ship was just drifting alone in the empty sea, held up only by the waves. What was truly astonishing was that inside the ship, the crew's belongings, food, and some cargo were all perfectly fine. But there was one thing missing. The crew themselves had vanished without a trace. This is the tale of the Mary. The story of the Celeste has been puzzling historians for the last 150 years. It's a mystery that only the ocean knows. Welcome back, folks, to another video about this ship. It was originally named a John, and during its early voyages, it faced some minor accidents, which is why it's pretty well known for mishaps. But until then, it hadn't experienced any major disasters. When it changed ownership and came under Captain Benjamin Briggs, it was renamed Mary Celeste. It was docked on the shores of New York on November 7th, getting loaded up with cargo. I was on a ship loaded with 1,700 barrels of ethanol, which isn't for drinking, but for industrial use. All these barrels were supposed to be transported from New York to Genoa, Italy, across the Atlantic Ocean. There were a total of 10 people on board, including the ship's captain, Benjamin Briggs, his wife, their 2 young daughters, and 7 crew members. Before we set off, there were no issues with the ship, and we left smoothly without any interruptions. The journey was about 7,500 kilometers long, and normally, traveling that distance back then took not just days but weeks. Keep in mind that it had been 3 weeks since the Mary Celeste set off from New York, and according to the usual timeline, people were really starting to wonder when it would arrive at the port in Genoa. Even after all this time, there was still no sign of the Mary Celeste. In fact, other ships that had left New York after her were already reaching Genoa. It was getting worrying. How come the Mary Celeste hadn't made it to its destination after all these weeks? Why couldn't I reach it? 10 days after my sail set off, another British ship was supposed to leave New York and follow the same route to Gibraltar. This was the de ship, and after several weeks on December 4th, 1872, it came into view. The captain noticed that the ship wasn't moving at all, just staying in one spot. Seeing such a scene in this part of the ocean made the captain suspicious, so he signaled it several times from a distance. But when there was no reply, he decided to go closer. When he got near, he found out. It turned out that the ship was none other than the Mary Celeste, a famous vessel owned by the captain's friend. It had been a whole month since it left New York. The Mary Celeste was now sitting all alone in the Atlantic Ocean, 1,800 kilometers from Gibraltar, and there was absolutely no sign of activity. The captain of the de sent his crew over to the Mary Celeste, and they were shocked to find that no one was aboard. It had set sail from New York with 10 people, so where did they all go in the middle of the ocean? That was the question now plaguing de captain. At first, they thought there might have been some accident on the ship, but when they checked the Mary Celeste, everything was completely fine. The captain and his family's belongings, along with the crew members' clothes, were all untouched. Not only that, but the goods they were supposed to take to Genoa were also perfectly intact. Even the food supplies for the crew were still just sitting there. After a bit more investigation, they found a logbook in the captain's cabin. Ship captains kept a logbook where they noted the maintenance and issues related to the ship. The captain of the Mary Celeste made the last entry at 8 a.m. on November 25th, which was 10 days before the ship was found like this. This meant that the ship had been abandoned in the Atlantic Ocean for about 10 days. Captain de was observing all this but was confused. Then he noticed the lifeboat area and realized there was no lifeboat there. This could only mean one thing: something must have happened on the ship. Everyone panicked and jumped into the lifeboats to save themselves. The navigation instruments were missing from the captain's cabin, and a sword was found sheathed under his bed, which suggests that there wasn't any kind of attack on the ship. Otherwise, the sword would have been out of its sheath or not there at all. Besides the logbook, all sorts of other documents were also there. One more thing noticed was that the ship's cabin was wet everywhere, with water standing about 1.5 to 2 feet deep in several places. But that wasn't nearly enough for a ship this size. Just to let you know, according to international salvage law, if someone rescues a ship, they're entitled to a reward based on the ship's value. Taking advantage of this law, The captain of the De Great brought Mary Celeste to Gibraltar, where authorities kept the ship until the court hearings were wrapped up. The court conducted its own investigations, but after several hearings, they didn't find any clues. When the court hearings couldn't resolve the issue, people started speculating in different ways. People started making up stories. Some said that a mystical creature took my ship, the Mary Celeste, while others thought that some sea monster must have attacked it. Among all these fabricated tales, one thing was true. Ever since the Mary Celeste was built, it had been involved in accidents. Once, it collided with another ship, and despite just a minor bump, that ship sank. Then when the Mary Celeste was brought to port for repairs, before the repairs could even start, the captain suddenly fell ill and passed away just before the voyage. Because of all this, people started to believe these wild stories. People started to think that maybe the Mary Celeste was haunted by spirits and ghosts, which is why the latest incident happened. From then on, it also got called the ghost ship. But what really happened that day? There are a few theories we can look at one by one. The first theory is about betrayal. Many believe that the captain of the De Great killed all the crew members of the Mary Celeste to get the salvage rights. But here's the thing. If that were true, there would have to be blood somewhere on the ship. There are signs of damage here, but the degrees didn't leave any gaps behind and erased all the evidence. Or maybe this theory is just wrong. The second theory is really interesting. It claims that there were 1,700 barrels of alcohol on the ship. However, when the ship was brought to the authorities, 9 of those barrels were empty. It's possible that some of the barrels exploded, causing the crew members to jump into lifeboats and escape. But there were no signs of an explosion or fire where those barrels were stored. The theory suggests that the ship might have gotten caught in a storm and started taking on water. Seeing this, the captain decided to evacuate the ship, and everyone jumped into the small lifeboats and fled. However, those tiny lifeboats couldn't handle the rough seas and ended up capsizing, taking everyone down with them. This theory seems to make a lot of sense, but it's still just a theory. There are many theories out there, but none have been proven with solid evidence. Even after more than 150 years, the mystery remains unsolved to this day. It has not yet been figured out what happened with my Celeste, under what circumstances the captain abandoned the ship, and how everything unfolded. This mystery may have gone with Captain Benjamin Briggs. I hope you all will like and share this video. Thank you so much for your loving comments. See you in the next amazing video.